I need to tell you something I've never said out loud without my voice shaking. If you saw me today, standing taller than I used to, smiling like I actually belong in my own skin, you'd probably assume I've always been like this. Confident. Clear. Unapologetic. But that version of me didn't exist before that week. Before sorority rush week. Before I put on a dress, not as a joke, not as a dare, not for Halloween, but because I wanted to know what it felt like to be seen in a way I'd secretly imagined for years. And yeah, I know how that sounds. Because when most people hear crossdressing, their brain jumps straight to stereotypes. Comedy, kink, shock value, or trying to fool someone. But for me, it wasn't any of that. It was a key. And I didn't know what door it was going to open until I was already walking through it. I grew up learning how to perform masculinity like it was a subject in school. Walk like this. Speak like that. Don't move your hands too much. Don't show softness. Don't care too much. Don't feel too much. And I got good at it. So good that people complimented me for it. You're such a solid guy. You don't let anything get to you. You're chill. They meant it as praise. But it always felt like they were congratulating me for being absent from my own life. Because the truth was, I cared. A lot. I just didn't know where to put it. And the other truth, the one I buried deeper, was that sometimes late at night, when nobody was awake and the house felt like it was holding its breath, I'd open my phone and scroll. Not porn. Not anything obvious. Just outfits. Makeup tutorials. Before and after glow-ups. People transforming. Not because I wanted attention, but because something inside me whispered, what if you could look like how you feel? And every time I thought that, I'd slam the mental door shut and tell myself, no, that's weird. That's not you. I'd go back to being the person everyone expected. Until college. College changes things because nobody knows your childhood version. Nobody has a story about you yet. You're not trapped in the role you've been playing since middle school. You can become slightly different. And for the first time, I started wondering, what if I'm not supposed to spend my entire life pretending? I wasn't a frat guy. I wasn't even a party guy like that. But I had a roommate, Jay, who was basically a human golden retriever, friendly, loud, fearless. The kind of person who walks into a room and collects friends like receipts. One day he told me, bro, rush week is wild. You have to come out at least one night. Even if it's just to watch. I said no. He kept asking. I kept refusing. Then, this is where the universe gets suspicious. Jay's friend group needed an extra person for a themed pre-event. Apparently, some sororities were doing this playful theme thing that week. Costumes, characters, fun entrances, social media clips, all of it. And one of the themes was role reversal. Girls wearing suits and ties. Guys wearing dresses. It was supposed to be funny. Safe. A joke. The kind of crossdressing everyone claps at because it's framed as comedy. Jay said, dude, you'd kill it. Plus it's chill, no pressure. And I laughed like it was ridiculous. But inside? My stomach dropped. Like the universe had just offered me exactly what I'd never admit I wanted. A reason. An excuse. A cover story. A chance to do it without saying, I want to do this. So I said, way too casually, fine. Whatever. I'll do it. Jay slapped my shoulder like we just won a war. I went quiet. Because it didn't feel like a joke anymore. It felt like a cliff. And I had already stepped off. We went shopping the next day. I told myself I was just playing along. But the second we entered the store, everything became too real. There were racks of clothes that were never for me. And suddenly I had to face a question I'd avoided my whole life. If nobody was watching, what would I choose? Jay grabbed some bright, ridiculous dress and said, this one. I forced a laugh. No, bro. I'm not wearing that. And then the sales associate, an older woman with sharp eyeliner and the calm confidence of someone who has seen every kind of human drama, looked me up and down. And she said, casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Do you want to look funny? Or do you want to look good? I froze. Jay started laughing. He wants funny. But I surprised even myself when I said, I don't know. She tilted her head. Then we'll try both. She helped me pick something simple. Not over the top. A black dress. Clean lines. Something that didn't scream costume. She handed it to me like she was handing me a secret. And in that fitting room, under harsh retail lighting, I put it on. My hands were shaking. Not because I thought it was wrong. Because it felt right. Too right. I looked in the mirror and my brain did something it had never done before. It stopped arguing. It stopped critiquing. It stopped performing. For a split second, I didn't see a guy in a dress. I saw a version of me that had been waiting. And I whispered to myself, what the hell is this feeling? Then the fear rushed in. What if someone sees? What if I like this too much? What does this mean? And I ripped it off like the fabric was fire. But it was too late. Because the truth had already happened. I had seen myself. Rush week came fast. That night, Jay's friends gathered in our dorm like we were prepping for battle. Someone had a curling iron. Someone had contour. Someone had lashes. It was chaotic, loud, hilarious. And I was sitting there pretending to be annoyed while my heart was doing parkour. A girl named Tessa, one of Jay's friends, looked at me and said, okay, you sit. I tried to protest. No, I'm good. It's fine. She didn't even blink. Sit. So I sat. And she started applying makeup with the kind of focus that felt sacred. Not like a prank. Not like a joke. Like art. She matched tones, softened lines, lifted angles. Every brushstroke felt like a question. Who are you when you're not hiding? When she finished, she turned me toward the mirror. And the room went quiet. Jay said, yo, what? Someone else said, wait, hold on. Tessa smiled. Told you. He didn't need funny. He needed good. I looked at my reflection. And my throat tightened. Because the person in the mirror looked beautiful. Not perfect. Not like a model. But real. Like something inside me had finally been given permission to exist. And for the first time, I understood something I'd never understood before. People don't fear change. They fear what change reveals. The walk from the dorm to the event felt like walking through a spotlight. Every laugh I heard felt like it was about me. Every group of people felt like a jury. I kept thinking, this is insane. I should turn back. But Jay kept it light, like he knew if he made it serious I'd crumble. He said, bro, you're good. Own it. Own it. Easy to say when your whole identity isn't on trial. We arrived. Music. Lights. People everywhere. The air smelled like perfume and cheap alcohol and adrenaline. And the moment we stepped into the crowd, I felt eyes on me. Not just curious eyes. Assessing eyes. And my brain started spiraling. They know. They're laughing. I look stupid. Then something happened that I wasn't prepared for. A group of sorority girls, like the kind of girls I assumed would be the harshest, turned toward me. One of them blinked twice and said, okay, wait, you're kinda eating that up. Another said, hold on, is he serving? They laughed, but not at me. With me. And then one of them stepped closer, adjusted a piece of my outfit like she was fixing a crown, and said, don't slouch. Stand up. You look amazing. I didn't know what to do with that. Because my whole life I thought if I showed this side, people would punish me for it. Instead, they corrected my posture like they were protecting it. Rush week is basically social speedrunning. Small talk. Big smiles. Quick judgments. Where are you from? What's your major? What are you looking for? I thought I'd be treated like a gimmick. But some girls started talking to me like I was normal. And that was the most shocking part. Not the compliments. Not the laughter. The normalness. One girl, Maya, sat next to me and said, can I ask you something without it being weird? I swallowed. Sure. she said, is this just for the theme, or is it something you actually like? And my body went cold. Because that question was a mirror. And in that mirror was my truth, staring back, waiting to see if I would flinch. I tried to joke. I mean, it's rush week. Everyone's doing something. Maya didn't laugh. She just nodded like she understood fear. And she said softly, you don't have to explain yourself to me. I just want you to be safe in your own skin. That sentence hit me harder than anything else that night. Because no one had ever described my skin as something I deserved to be safe in. I realized something. I wasn't scared of the dress. I was scared of honesty. Later, there was a moment outside. Cool air, quieter space. I stepped away from the noise because my head was full. And I caught my reflection in a dark window. For a second I didn't think. I just looked. And I felt this strange grief, like I was mourning all the years I spent shutting this down. Then I heard a voice behind me. You look like you're about to disappear. It was Tessa. I laughed weakly. I'm fine. She leaned on the wall beside me and said, no, you're not. I didn't answer. She continued, listen. People think confidence is loud. It's not. Confidence is when you stop apologizing for existing. I stared at the ground. And then, without planning to, I said, I don't know what this means for me. Tessa nodded like she'd been waiting for that. It doesn't have to mean anything right now, she said. But it does mean you felt something. And that matters. That was the moment. Not the makeup. Not the event. Not the compliments. The moment someone gave me permission to not have a label. Just a feeling. Just a truth. Just me. When we got back, Jay passed out like nothing happened. Everyone else drifted away. I stood in the bathroom alone. Makeup smudged slightly. Hair not perfect anymore. Dress still on. And I looked at myself again, this time without the crowd, without the noise. I expected the magic to fade. It didn't. Instead, something heavier arrived. A question I couldn't unask. If I can feel this alive as someone I've been hiding, why would I go back to being half asleep? I took off the dress carefully, like it was fragile. Not because it was expensive. Because it was the first thing that ever held my truth without judging it. I wiped off the makeup. And I felt a weird kind of sadness as my face returned to the one I'd always worn. Not because I hated it. But because I realized I'd been living in only one room of my own house. And there were other rooms. A few days later, rush week continued. No costume this time. No reason. No joke. And that's when the real decision showed up. Do I only crossdress when it's acceptable? When it's funny? When it's protected by context? Or do I admit, to myself, that I want the freedom, not the excuse? That night, I didn't wear a dress. But I did something that felt just as terrifying. I wore something subtle. A fitted top under my hoodie. A little concealer. A touch of lip balm that wasn't invisible. Tiny choices. But they felt like rebellion. Because now it wasn't a costume. It was me choosing myself in small, quiet ways. And when I walked out, I expected the world to punish me. The world didn't even notice. And that was its own kind of lesson. The cage wasn't outside me. It was inside me. People think sororities are just parties and drama and glitter. But Rush Week, at least the version I experienced, was a crash course in something deeper. Community is not about fitting in. It's about being held while you figure out who you are. I learned that femininity isn't weakness. I learned softness can be power. I learned I don't have to hate masculinity to explore something else. And most importantly, I learned that the parts of me I thought would get me rejected were the exact parts that made me human. I'm not here to tell you I have every answer. I'm not here to put a neat label on my identity and wrap it like a gift. The truth is, I'm still learning. Some days I feel bold. Some days I feel scared. Some days I put on something feminine and feel unstoppable. Some days I put on the same hoodie and just want to disappear. But now I know something I didn't know before. I'm allowed to exist in more than one version. A week after Rush, I ran into Maya again. She smiled and said, "How are you?" I almost said, "Good." The old autopilot answer. But this time I told the truth. I said, "I feel like I met myself." She nodded, like that made perfect sense. And she said, "Good. Don't lose them." I walked back to my dorm and realized something. Sorority Rush Week didn't change my life because of the parties. It changed my life because it gave me a moment where I stopped lying. Not to the world. To myself. And once you stop lying to yourself, once you see yourself, you can't unsee it. That's the scary part. But it's also the beautiful part. Because from that point on, every choice is yours. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't asking, "What will people think?" I was asking,